my God. There he is, the Prince of Darkness. And there is the monster. That's gotta be Kane. That's gotta be Kane.
The story of Undertaker and Kane is the most compelling narrative in all of wrestling.
There were so many levels to this story.
You killed your family, Undertaker!
Today we explore the origins of two iconic characters, shed light on their life backstage, and expose the evil genius behind it all. Our story begins on May 19th, 1977.
It was a day that changed me forever.
We're talking about a little funeral home, sitting up on a hill, beautiful oak trees all around.
All was harmony at first in the 𝗖𝗚𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗚𝗧 family until the Undertaker's father, who ran a funeral home, hired an apprentice. William Moody, later known as 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗚𝗧, was more than an employee. He was the catalyst that led to the destruction of the family unit. 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗚𝗧 lived on the grounds in close proximity to the funeral parlor and in close proximity to the Undertaker's mother. Through an ongoing affair with her husband's assistant, she gave birth to a bastard child. Kane and Undertaker aren't brothers, they are half-brothers. Then one night, young Undertaker walked in on them. He didn't understand what he was seeing, only that it was a secret that led to his destruction. In real life, The Undertaker's actual mother was upset when she found out about the adultery angle, appalled that people might think she was unfaithful. Mark Calaway, the man behind the character, had to explain to her that it was only a storyline, that no one would think she actually had an affair with 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗚𝗧. But fiction and reality did intersect a great deal more than one would think.
When I was young, my mother actually worked in a funeral home.
And 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗏 also had that real-life connection.
When he said he was a licensed mortician, I think, everybody's jaw dropped in the room. If that wasn't fate, I don't know what was.
On May 19th, 1977, there was a fire. 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗏, who lived on the property, rushed up the hill and saw the 12-year-old boy that would later become the Undertaker cowering behind the bushes, watching his childhood home go up in flames. It was no accident. It was Taker's attempt to purify the family through the catastrophic act of arson and murder. Some sources claim Taker taught his baby brother to play with matches and smoke cigarettes so that when he made his move and started the fire, everyone would think it was Kane's fault. Eager to impress his brother, a 6-year-old Kane played along, but it was the Undertaker who initiated the blaze.
And I live with that fact every day of my life.
Unbeknownst to the Undertaker, 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗏 was able to rescue his son from the fire. By the time he got back to the bushes to confront Taker, he was already gone. 𝗤𝗏𝗏 would spend the next 20 years plotting his revenge. Undertaker, on the other hand, took the trauma of his past and used it to become a successful wrestler.
So I have taken it upon myself to walk a path where no one else chooses to.
In the very beginning, when The Undertaker came out, it was very simple.
In 1990, The Undertaker was portrayed as a soulless giant who felt no pain. He was a zombie. He didn't speak, he didn't blink, and he didn't sell moves. His backstory was whatever the announcers speculated about his lack of a pulse.
Rest in peace.
My whole existence is death.
In his early career, he called himself Kane the Undertaker, in memory of his lost brother. Haunted by the ghosts of his past, he walked the earth fancying himself a protector, when really, he was evil through and through. This self-delusion was his key motivation in his early career.
There comes a time
where they must be held accountable for their actions.
But everything changed when Paul Bearer re-entered his life in 1991. By the time they meet again, Taker has become an unstoppable monster. But Bearer has a plan. He's playing the long game. He knows where all the bodies are buried because he helped dig the graves. He raises an urn. In it, the ashes of the Calloway family. Every time Paul Bearer raises this urn, the Undertaker becomes invincible, taking unimaginable punishment and coming back stronger. Not because the ashes have a supernatural hold over him. Every time Paul Bearer raises the urn, it's a threat, a reminder that he knows the truth, that it was him who started the fire, that he wasn't a supernatural protector, but a murderer.
Rest in peace.
On the outside, Paul Bearer looked like a loyal servant, humbly obeying the Undertaker, when in reality he was blackmailing him, weaponizing Undertaker's trauma and guilt, and relishing the influence gained through his power. For 6 years, they operated in a state of symbiotic darkness. Paul Bearer watched closely over the Undertaker, studied his weaknesses, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash the creature of pure vengeance that was Kane. As long as Taker played by his rules, he knew his secret would remain hidden from the world. But in 1996, Paul Bearer stripped back the facade to reveal a man with a dark past, just in time for that past to walk through the door in form of the brother he thought he'd burned alive.
I hate your guts! I curse the ground that you walk on!
From early on, it had been the tyranny of a secret that shaped the Undertaker's character. When Paul Bearer turned against him at SummerSlam 1996, Taker knew he was at his mercy. Now that they were enemies, his secret would soon be revealed. So he tried to destroy him.
Kane is alive, Undertaker!
It was time.
He suffered for 20 years, and it's all your fault!
Paul Bearer thought Taker had become weak. Meanwhile, Kane had only grown stronger. It was the perfect moment to get his revenge.
You burnt the funeral home to the ground! You killed your family, Undertaker! I'm gonna burn in hell!
In 1992, he saved the lovely Miss Elizabeth from Jake the Snake Roberts. In 1995, the $1 Million Man said, "Everybody has a price." But The Undertaker was the only one he couldn't buy. He was digging holes and taking souls not randomly, but for those he felt that deserved it. The Undertaker was a supernatural force of justice. A good guy, someone the fans could rally behind, and he felt safe in this delusion. Then Paul Bearer divested him of the armor that he had wrapped around himself. Now, when he was at his most vulnerable, The Undertaker prepared for battle like never before, because he was going to be tested like never before.
He's waited 20 years to face his brother! High time! He's coming! He's coming!
Welcome to my own personal hell.
Kane debuted in the middle of a heated feud between Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, which culminated in the first ever Hell in a Cell match.
The Hell in a Cell concept, that was actually built for Kane.
And I have never seen an apparatus ever quite like this.
The match was bloody brilliance. After a 5-star classic came what many call the greatest debut in wrestling history.
Now we'll come to Tombstone! No.
The lights went out, bam, and the music hit, and the crowd had no idea.
Oh my God, wait a minute! It's Paul Bearer! It's Paul Bearer! And that's gotta be Kane! That's gotta be Kane! The two brothers looking eye to eye. What must The Undertaker be thinking right now?
When The Undertaker laid eyes on Kane, he said more in one look than 1,000 words could express.
Probably one of my best reactions ever. Because you can see in the guy that doesn't sell anything, you can see it in my eyes. This is my brother that I thought was dead.
His brother was alive. And not only that, Kane was bigger and stronger than him and hell-bent on revenge.
Kane was almost to a T just like him. To see those two face off, just looking at each other, same height, same everything.
2 7-foot monsters.
The Undertaker stood at 6'8", Kane was 6'9". Kane's exploding pyro was actually Undertaker's idea. While The Undertaker was all about rising up from death and darkness, the demon Kane wanted to burn it all down.
Undertaker had such ownership of that angle. A lot of Taker's fingerprints, shall we say, were all over that storyline.
There was just a number of things that fell into place that when you look back on it, it made it all perfect for that situation.
I'm biased, but it was the greatest debut in history.
If it had not been the greatest debut in history, we probably wouldn't remember Glenn Jacobs today.
My own personal dentist, 𝗖𝗛𝗣𝗬𝗥𝗚𝗚𝗧, DDS.
My career before Kane stunk.
On the day of his debut as Kane, Glenn had to ask a friend for a ride to the arena. He arrived in a 20-year-old car, and it broke down on the highway. With smoke pouring from the vents, Glenn Jacobs almost came in late for his life-changing debut. But Bad Blood 1997 wasn't actually the first time he and Mark Calloway faced each other in the ring. They had their first match in 1995. Taker was impressed.
Got back and I talked to Vince and I'm like, we need to get this guy up here.
Jim Ross then signed him to WWE at Undertaker's request.
They had great chemistry. They had great feel for each other. They had respect for each other. They liked each other.
As soon as Mark Calloway found out he was getting a storyline brother and that brother was going to be played by Glenn Jacobs, he knew it was going to be great. He always saw more in him than a wrestling dentist. After Kane confronted his brother, who hadn't seen him in 20 years, The Undertaker went into hiding. For 2 months, Kane terrorized the entire roster, searching for The Undertaker, bringing destruction to anyone who stood in his way until his brother would agree to fight him.
For I will never fight my own flesh and blood. I will never fight Kane.
Initially, Undertaker refused to fight his brother based on a promise he had made to their parents before they died, that they would never fight again. This irony, that a man who murdered his parents would care about an old promise to them, highlights the cognitive dissonance at the core of The Undertaker's character. He saw himself as a man of honor despite being a mass murderer.
It's a time for the truth, and I know the truth.
With pallbearer openly denouncing him, Undertaker felt the need to share his side of the story.
As I returned, I could hear the sirens. I could see the smoke filling the sky.
He maintained that it was a tragic accident, that he saw Kane playing with the embalming fluids. He denied responsibility and integrated the dark past into his heroic wrestling persona once again. Maybe by shutting away the evil murderer, he really became a better person. He wanted to be the kind of person that wanted peace, not destruction.
Undertaker was avoiding Kane because he didn't want to hurt him. He was his little brother, right?
By refusing to fight his brother, The Undertaker tried to protect what was left of the family he once destroyed. He wanted reconciliation, but Kane and Bearer had to get their revenge. A fan theory suggests that the relationship between Paul Bearer and The Undertaker's mother was more than an affair, a forbidden romance. When she died in the fire, Bearer became so consumed by hatred that he gradually lost his mind. But the real reason for Paul Bearer's lust for revenge is many shades darker. Being a mortician was Paul Bearer's identity. Taker's mother was his quiet obsession, her baby Kane a fantasy of control. Then The Undertaker robbed him of all that. If there's one thing we know about Paul Bearer, it's that he is a master manipulator. For years, he presented himself as a humble servant to The Undertaker, before revealing that he had him in the palm of his hand all along. His eyes wide, unblinking, and manic. When things go right, they glaze over with disturbing pleasure. When things go wrong, they dart around frantically like a cornered rat. These involuntary expressions are the only hint we get at the game he's actually playing. Paul Bearer was not motivated by the grief over his family, but by the theft of influence and control. The puppet strings so carefully laid down before Taker burned it all. He grieved this like he grieved the death of all he held dear. Outwardly, he portrayed himself as the caring father.
I was there when they took him to the burn ward and soaked him in the saline solution.
This is because he needed Kane. He needed this monster for physical protection in his quest for revenge against The Undertaker. So he made sure that the monster needed him and trusted him only. After the fire, Paul Bearer hid Kane away. Otherwise, he would have been subject to state custody. He raised him locked in a basement. Later, he put him in an insane asylum. By being the only person from Kane's past to visit him there, Paul Bearer was his only link to reality and to his identity. He dictated the narrative that Kane had of himself. He planted thoughts in his head that he later echoed, not knowing if they were true, if he remembered them, or started believing them out of a sheer lack of alternatives. Bearer convinced him that he was hideously scarred. Kane became so thoroughly convinced that he continued to think himself deformed even after his physical wounds had healed. This way, Bearer made sure Kane would always wear a mask and remain psychologically dependent on him. In fact, he said no one came to see him because he was hideous.
You want to see how I feel inside?
Spurred on by Paul Bearer's mind games, Kane spent his entire life preparing his revenge, which was really his father's revenge. Paul Bearer sacrificed the life of his biological son to turn him into a monster. That's how much he hated The Undertaker.
You must face your brother!
At the Royal Rumble 1998, Taker's resolve was finally broken. Kane attacked him, locked him in a casket, and set him on fire. It should have been the evening of the score, but Taker survived, and he was furious at this betrayal. He had tried with all his might to avoid an escalation. Now there was no way past it.
I will strike down upon thee with anger and furious vengeance.
A match was fixed for WrestleMania 14. Kane had spent his entire life looking forward to this opportunity. The pressure was on, for his character as well as for Glenn Jacobs in real life.
This was my big break. I was really nervous. I just didn't want to mess it up.
WrestleMania, the showcase of the Immortals.
The first ever match between Kane and Undertaker was unforgettable.
For the first time ever, you had someone who was equal to Undertaker as far as physical abilities, and also added that kind of supernatural element that Undertaker brings.
What made the match so great was the storytelling. Kane used the same moves as The Undertaker. The logic was that Paul Bearer had trained Kane in secret for years, forcing him to watch Undertaker's matches so he could eventually do everything Taker did, but better.
He knows The Undertaker. He knows what he's thinking. He thinks a lot alike like The Undertaker does.
It was just magic.
It was the climax of the original storyline between Undertaker and Kane.
Taker is very proud of this match and the storyline itself.
The Kane-Undertaker rivalry, it's the best story that WWE's ever told. The layers of the story out of the gate were so rich.
It was so good, and it always made sense.
What many don't know is that Kane wasn't supposed to do all that. By 1996, the backstage goal was to turn The Undertaker from a special attraction into a main event protagonist. And the way to do that was to get people invested. They needed to establish emotional stakes.
For Taker to take the next step in the evolution of that character, we needed to hear from The Undertaker. We needed to hear from him more.
So Paul Bearer was removed and Mark Calaway was forced to find his voice. For the first time, he had to cut long promos and show human emotion. It was a vulnerable position for the dead man, but the pressure pushed him to excel. Then Glenn Jacobs was determined as his next opponent. At first, there wasn't much thought behind it.
Well, we'll put Glenn under a mask and we'll come up with this story of why he's under a mask.
They needed a Monster of the Month for Taker to fight during his title reign. But once the secret started being teased in May 1997, Vince McMahon realized the story was so good, it needed to be a long-term, slow burn. Taker lost the title to Bret Hart because the story didn't need a championship to be relevant. In fact, the title would have taken away from the intense personal nature of the brother versus brother rivalry.
The story was just so good.
Leading up to Kane's debut, the booking team was full of creative geniuses. Jim Cornette, who had laid the foundation for Kane's demon gimmick as Unabomb earlier.
He was spawned in the Valley of Death. The mighty Unabomb is the demon of destruction.
And Bruce Pritchard, who had accompanied The Undertaker's character from the moment of its conception in 1990.
Going through creative, you throw out some wild ideas. And I asked the question, I said, hey, what if The Undertaker had a brother?
It was a perfect storm.
That Kane character was Bruce Pritchard's from the start. But then when we started writing it, Bruce wasn't a part of the creative. So, first it was Vince and I, writing the Kane Undertaker stuff.
Most of their backstory was conceived just ahead of Kane's debut. It wasn't mapped out with patient care, but developed in real time. There was just enough undefined space in Undertaker's backstory that they could make it all make sense in retrospect. This is called retroactive continuity, a literary tool used in comic franchises where previously established facts in a story are reinterpreted to fix inconsistencies or add new plot twists.
They were building Kane into The Undertaker's mythology.
By the time their big match rolled around at WrestleMania 14, Kane was meant as a strong foe that posed a serious threat, to cement Undertaker as an even bigger star once he defeated him. But in doing so, they also created a new star in Kane, which gave back so much more than anyone could have expected. One tombstone wasn't enough. 2 tombstones weren't enough. It took 3 tombstones to defeat Kane. Nobody had kicked out of The Undertaker's finishing move before that.
So he's always been there for me. And he's always wanted Kane to be the equal of The Undertaker.
Because Undertaker cared about business and the rest of the boys rather than his own self.
Through the years, Undertaker himself repeatedly expressed interest in elevating the Kane character. Seeing how they're forever connected by their being brothers, they both benefited from each other's standing. Behind the scenes, they developed a spirit of friendly competition, which also helped them both to be at their best. But in the end, it was Taker who came out on top.
He's an Undertaker. He buries the opposition. It's not just a period at the end of the sentence, it's an exclamation point.
After this climax, the next step had to be something drastically different.
If you don't like the smell of flesh burning, get up and leave.
William Moody, the man behind Paul Bearer, came up with an idea that was as mad as it was brilliant. The Inferno match.
Why do we play with fire? And we all eventually get burned.
This match was specifically designed for the Kane-Undertaker feud. The two brothers fighting immersed in a sea of flames mirrored the funeral home fire that started it all. The match was so well received that they did it again a few months later. This time, Kane's leg caught on fire. But to keep things from getting stale, the creative team had to come up with a new development.
The Brothers of Destruction was really the logical conclusion, our logical destination of the journey that we've been on.
Many fans wished that Kane and Undertaker would reconcile and forgive each other. WWE teased it often, to huge reactions.
Our friendship to his older brother, and Undertaker is returning it. What a moment.
But they couldn't go through with it. Backstage, the decision was clear. Taker was needed as a main eventer. Having the Brothers of Destruction join up as a tag team at this point was out of the question. Instead, a 180-degree shift. On October 19th, 1998, The Undertaker finally admitted before himself and the world that he started the fire. This wasn't a heartfelt confession, it was a justification. He tried to kill Kane because he was weak and worthless. Not a convincing motivation, not even a truthful one, but the only reason that the emotionally stunted loner knew how to articulate safely, without breaking character and showing weakness, doubt, or insecurity. Surely it was Paul Bearer whispering in his ear that this was the best way to salvage the situation, to shed the old skin of self-delusion and fully embrace the dark side. It made sense that Paul Bearer wanted to align with Taker because in the months leading up to this segment, he had been losing his influence over Kane. But there is no reason why The Undertaker would align with Paul Bearer now that he had no leverage over him. This is where character motivations fall apart. The real reason for Paul Bearer joining The Undertaker is not found between the lines of a wrestling promo, but in a meeting room. It was a way to establish Taker as the villainous cult leader of the Ministry of Darkness.
You have to adapt with the times. You have to change.
The Attitude Era saw a shift away from family-friendly comic characters toward gritty anti-heroes that blurred the line between good and evil. Vince McMahon, founder of the WWF and one of the brightest minds in the business, had always been skeptical about whether the Kane character could fit that mold. He wanted Kane to be cool and edgy. At the same time, Kane looks very much like a comic character.
Kane takes a lot of pride in his appearance because he's jealous of The Undertaker. He wants to look like a superhero because he wants to be better than The Undertaker.
Luckily, Glenn Jacobs had the best example to follow in The Undertaker.
On the one hand, it should have been cartoonish because you have this idea like he's a dead man who's out there wrestling, but he did it so well and it was so convincing that it was like, oh my gosh, this is cool creepy.
In Kane's original design, we see a similar sort of brilliance. Scarred and rejected, Kane overcompensated for his shattered ego by putting on a cape and becoming a superhero. He grew up so isolated that he couldn't tell good from evil, and his only motivation was revenge.
Where to, Stephanie?
The Undertaker was still popular, but some segments of the Ministry of Darkness had the opposite effect of what he intended, appearing over the top and ridiculous. In order for the dead man to survive the Attitude Era, he had to disappear for a while.
You know, and it was just a matter like, I don't know that this character is going to be able to sustain this part of the business.
In 1999, he became the American Badass.
It was good for me because it allowed me to work differently for a while, to think creatively in a different sense.
But even during this era, fans wanted to see the mythology of Kane and Undertaker expand.
Oh, there's a new history book out now. The history of my Undertaker.
The Brothers of Destruction were more than a wrestling storyline. They became a cinematic universe of their own. Like Star Wars or Marvel, there's an established canon, and an endless expansion of unofficial stories, licensed comic books, novels, and fan theories. In the 1999 series by Chaos Comics, the young Undertaker was taken in by a cult of druids after the fire at the funeral home. The theory that they trained him in the dark arts has its origins on Reddit, where people try to fill in the blank years of his character. That's the level of popularity they achieved. In a wrestling program, where TV time needs to be filled, where injuries derail years of planning, in a world where the story is never quite finished. Kane and Undertaker had created a legacy that the rest of their careers could ride on. That alone made them legendary. But there was more to come.
The size of this human being, or is that a human being?
Glenn Jacobs Kane is one strong son of a.
And he's like a super jacked human being, like it's scary.
High in the air, military presses. Can you believe this?
Glenn Jacobs could outlift most of his colleagues. Then Brock Lesnar joined the company, a man who prides himself on being the most dominant man in any locker room. He often trained with Kane because he was the only one that could match him in the gym. The two were notorious for setting the maximum weight on every machine and loading the barbells to the limit. Despite his freakish strength, Glenn Jacobs was also a nerd. While most wrestlers spent their travel time playing cards and drinking, Jacobs was often found huddled over a Game Boy. This habit, combined with his temperament, gave him a reputation as one of the most soft-spoken and professional members of the locker room.
Such a good person, intelligent, well-studied person. You don't get all that. All you get is Kane off of TV.
Glenn was not part of the BSK, The Undertaker's legendary backstage clique, but he was often invited to join their private sessions. He was reportedly the only outsider whom the group allowed into their inner circle on the road. The reason for this was that they wanted to protect the nice guy that he was from the brutal backstage politics of the time.
Back then, everybody was interested in protecting their spot, often at the expense of new guys.
Glenn Jacobs was too nice for his own good. His in-ring performances echoed that fact. Colleagues often joked about his inability to hurt anyone. He was a true master at making moves look painful while not touching a hair on his opponent's head. But in his early days, his nice guy attitude almost got him fired. According to Jim Cornette, Kane's WWE career almost ended before it ever started.
Vince actually said these words: "I hate it about Glenn Jacobs, but he just doesn't have the killer instinct. Probably gonna have to let him go." And, you know, when he would get that way, you couldn't talk him out of it because he'd made up his mind.
Jacobs was hesitant to be physically aggressive enough with the legendary Undertaker. One time, he was supposed to slap Undertaker in the ring, but couldn't bring himself to do it. So he asked Taker to slap him backstage just before the segment to get himself fired up.
You hit me so hard.
During the Attitude Era, as WWE was moving away from supernatural characters, there was no need for Paul Bearer in front of the camera. He faded into the background and took on new responsibilities backstage, but even as the air of mystery around Kane and Undertaker died down, they found other ways in which their brotherly bond made a compelling dynamic.
As easy as it is to relate to two brothers fighting, it's also very relatable to when they make up.
Kane and Undertaker understand each other on a deeper level than any mortal being they've come across. Two hellish monsters, trapped in the past, held hostage emotionally by Paul Bearer, until violence set them free. This is why they are called the Brothers of Destruction.
Standing before you is the true army of darkness.
WWE audience had always wanted us to get together. They were dominant individual characters, so they'd be more dominant as a tag team.
The early 2000s were a time with many great tag teams, but none compared to the Brothers of Destruction.
Are you kidding me? Were you going to set up the Hardy Boys or Edge and Christian or Dudleys? No. It's the Brothers of Destruction.
There was nobody that matched up with us, right? So we just basically killed just about everybody that we got in the ring with. We just murdered them.
As singles wrestlers, Kane and Taker were used to big, tall opponents. When they burst onto the tag team scene, their opponents were usually smaller, enough to get tossed around like rag dolls.
Undertaker and Kane combined make the most destructive force in the history of the World Wrestling Federation.
But every now and then, they found some similarly sized opponents, like the tag team 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏.
All those muscles are fine, but we'll take a muscle-bound man and drop his face in the sand, and that you can count on, Coach.
At Unforgiven 2001, 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 faced the Brothers of Destruction, but something went wrong.
I just hear Taker yell feed, like once or twice.
Calaway was upset because his opponents were too slow getting up, not feeding his comeback momentum. Add in the lackluster selling, bad positioning and timing, and the match quickly fell apart. Taker's expression says it all. He ripped into 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 backstage, which led directly to the team's release that same night. This outburst was a harsh reminder for Glenn Jacobs that in the world of pro wrestling, one bad performance could ruin anyone's career, no matter how close you are with The Undertaker. After all, it was him who had brought 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 into the company, advocated for them similar to what he did for Glenn. Now he was the one who got them fired. Taker brought the intensity, especially when he saw his credibility threatened. Glenn, on the other hand, avoided conflict even when he was wronged. Matt Hardy's anecdote begins at an airport in 1999.
I remember we get there and Michael Hayes was waiting on us and said, "Oh, got you guys a surprise today, boys. I'm going to put you in first class today."
Little did Matt and Jeff know that the spare tickets for first class actually belonged to Kane, who was late for the flight. Once the Hardy brothers had gotten comfortable in their seats, however, Glenn did show up.
It's Kane, and there's no seat for him.
Glenn didn't make a fuss about it. He simply went to the back of the plane and flew economy. But his storyline big brother, The Undertaker, couldn't let that slide. The Hardy Boys were held accountable in Wrestler's Court, the light-hearted backstage disciplinary system headed by The Undertaker. Even though Taker's sentence was mild.
Sentencing is done. He says, I have been provided a bottle of Jack Daniels by Matt Hardy and Jeff Hardy, so I am going to let them off the hook.
Jay Rizzo, better known as Christian, also experienced firsthand how nice Glenn Jacobs can be, even when pestered to the point of white-hot rage.
For whatever reason, I started having this recurring dream/nightmare about Kane, this grunting monster that never talked.
When Christian joined the WWF, he was terrified of meeting Kane because of his recurring nightmares.
You ripped my arm off and started to beat me with my own arm.
When he got to meet the man behind the monster, Christian saw that Glenn was a very nice person and started taking advantage of him. One time he punched him in the gut and ran away for no reason at all. This disrespectful behavior became a habit for Christian. He took every chance he got to pay the Big Red Machine back for his nightmare violence. One time, he found him relaxing with his eyes closed in the locker room.
I don't even know why I did it. I just dumped some of the water on his face. His eyes pop open, and I've never seen him so mad, and it scared the shit out of me. I started to run.
Furious, Glenn threw a steel chair after him. Later, when Christian came back to apologize, it was actually Glenn who apologized to him.
That's how nice Glenn is. It's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to throw the chair at you.
This incident was not brought before Wrestler's Court. Kane handled it on his own. Because of his inhuman strength, everyone knew that if he was properly annoyed, he could easily defend himself. And he did just that in a match with Big Show. Big Show had a habit of apologizing to his opponents preemptively before he violently chopped them in the chest.
He would say, "I'm sorry," before he'd chop you in the chest. Well, he bends me over the top rope and he's like, "Sorry." And I went, "Me too." And he had this weird look on his face, like, "What do you mean?" So he slaps me and I drilled him right in the face.
Today, Mark and Glenn enjoy getting together, sharing war stories from their time as the Brothers of Destruction.
I don't know if I necessarily ever had time to stop and think, wow, this is really special. I wish I could have. I wish I would have had time to savor it more.
Because of their shared history, their bond remains strong.
They're super close. They're great friends.
To this day, some people believe Kane and Undertaker are real-life brothers.
People would ask me, I said, "Yeah, we're half brothers." I'd laugh straight in their eyes.
Back in the 90s, nearly everybody was trapped under the spell of wrestling magic.
They would come up to Paul Bearer and they would actually say the words, "Is he really dead?"
At autograph signings and meet and greets, Kane and Undertaker's booths were among the most popular. Fans often gifted Glenn hot sauces or spicy salami, playing on his character's fiery backstory. The Undertaker also received some very strange gifts.
Like fans sending him vials of blood. Just stuff that you would think, we should call the cops, maybe.
If Glenn Jacobs was born just a few years earlier, maybe he would have been one of those people sending Mark Calloway samples of his blood to use in his dark rituals. He was an Undertaker fanboy.
He's actually my favorite WWE superstar before I got into WWE as a fan.
Mark and Glenn's relationship behind the curtain was special, to say the least. Vince McMahon once said Mark Calloway worried more about Kane than about himself. He protected his friend's career behind closed doors, often without Glenn Jacobs knowing. And there's no doubt he needed it. For all the storytelling greatness of his feud with Taker, Kane was also part of some of the worst storylines in wrestling history. Glenn wrote in his autobiography that at one point he became so frustrated with his booking that he considered leaving the company entirely. One of the worst examples is the Katie Vick storyline. On Monday Night Raw, Triple H claimed Kane killed a woman and then had sex with her embalmed carcass.
Love the smell of formaldehyde in the morning.
Meanwhile, on SmackDown, The Undertaker also had a problem. At No Mercy 2002, he had to wrestle Brock Lesnar with a broken hand.
He didn't take any time off. And a guy that big needs time off to replenish their batteries and freshen up, shall we say.
The injury was real, but Taker didn't want to take time off, so it was incorporated into the storyline, which led to weeks of pain as Lesnar targeted the broken hand.
Oh! Propane tank! Off the arm of the Undertaker!
In a pre-taped segment, the two brothers opened the show, reuniting backstage and sharing the pain of their tortured souls in an iconic character moment.
So, how was your week?
Mark Calloway cites this scene as one of his favorites. Even though neither Taker nor Kane were the original versions of their character, they were linked because they were brothers.
And it didn't matter whichever direction we went in, if we came back together.
The tag team run of the Brothers of Destruction, while dominant, was short-lived. The reason for this is simple. A typical tag team of that era weighed around 300 pounds combined, whereas the Brothers of Destruction weighed over 300 pounds each. After a while, there just weren't any viable opponents left for them to destroy. So, they split up. Their relationship was a permanent cycle of reconciliation and betrayal. Kane and Undertaker were the only two beings capable of understanding each other. Together, they used violence and destruction, their best talents, for total dominance. But at the end of the day, they were still rivals.
With Undertaker and Kane, it hit close to home with a lot of fans because brothers aren't always going to get along. and they're going to have fights and quarrels, and they're going to have mountains and valleys, and I think people relate to that.
This brother dynamic was another secret to their longevity.
I think it helped people relate to these characters that otherwise would have been unbelievable and just completely over the top and out of the realm of human possibility.
At this point, both Kane and Undertaker were far removed from the supernatural roots of their characters. In 2003, Vince McMahon made a decision that for some killed the Kane character off completely, when really it was meant to bring both brothers closer to their original gimmicks. Kane's unmasking was an unpopular decision, but its motivations were actually brilliant. Kane was forced to unmask after losing a world title match, forced to fully confront himself for the first time.
That made the character much more alluring to me because he is a psychological monster. You know, you find out that the scars that he's covering up, they're actually on the inside. They're not on the outside.
It's one thing to be disfigured through fire. It's entirely different to realize you have been bred for revenge, played, used, and manipulated by your own father, the one person you ever trusted. Kane undoes the mask, and for the first time, surrenders to the fact that he is a monster. He rejects humanity outright and embraces the power of evil, attacking executives, torturing people, setting commentators on fire. His goal was still to beat The Undertaker, but for different reasons. Not for Paul Bearer, not for revenge, but for himself. To reclaim his own life, he had to slay the demon of his past.
It didn't matter in which direction I went, which direction Kane went. We could not touch each other for a year, and still, boom, just like that, you put those two back together, and people were just like, oh yeah.
Meanwhile, the American Badass was the opposite. In Kane's eyes, the weakest form of The Undertaker, a pathetic shell of the supernatural force he used to be.
This man was not my brother. This man was not a monster.
Anytime you take something that's working and change it, you run the risk of pissing off the people that support you because you're doing something different than what they got attached to.
By burying the American Badass under 8 tons of dirt, Kane inadvertently resurrected The Undertaker as the dead man.
Even though they had the same history, the characters were different than the first time they met. And that made it really alluring and different. It wasn't just a rehash, it was literally something brand new.
Be that as it may, the fact remains that the perfect peak of their early years was never reached in their later feuds. There was too much lore, too little space for character motivations to make sense or feel new and intriguing anymore. Paul Bearer returned in 2004 after spending 4 years away from the cameras, only to be buried in cement 1 month later by The Undertaker in a move that didn't make sense to the audience. The Brothers of Destruction reunited in 2006, then split again in 2008, with Kane and Undertaker becoming central pillars of their respective brands, Raw and SmackDown. 2010 marks the first time that Kane actually beat The Undertaker in a big match.
He had never really beaten me in any big pay-per-view. If he was going to be a legitimate champion, he had to beat his brother.
What was supposed to be the big payoff of Kane's character arc came a decade too late. That same excitement that the creation of Kane sparked in 1997, along with the perfect storyline that followed, now turned to disappointment, because it only went downhill from there. In discussions about their legacy, one moment keeps coming up that for many ruined it all: the unmasking of Kane.
I just think they bastardized it, through the process. To this day, I think Kane would still, have the aura that The Undertaker still has.
Despite many attempts to legitimize Kane as The Undertaker's equal, they were on entirely different levels as far as creative was concerned.
Mark was a natural leader, was a man's man.
Glenn Jacobs was well liked and respected, but he couldn't hold a candle to The Undertaker. Taker's Hall of Fame ceremony took 75 minutes. Kane's induction was significantly shorter and took place during the COVID pandemic without a live audience, a favor for the company. Mark Calaway got the main course, while Glenn Jacobs contented himself with the leftovers. Toward the end of his career, Kane became a glorified mid-carder. His retirement came unexpected. He left quietly. Taker, on the other hand, retained a strong showing and went out with a bang. This contrast highlights the difference in their mindsets.
Mark Calaway was always a huge advocate of mine.
It was never Glenn Jacobs' ambition to leave a legacy larger than that of The Undertaker. Instead, he was grateful for every moment in the spotlight that they shared.
There wouldn't be a Kane if there hadn't been an Undertaker in the end. And that's really just a testament to him in that your real legacy, maybe in some cases, is the opponents that you helped create.
Kane would be nothing without The Undertaker, but their gratitude is a two-way street.
Our friendship outside of the ring, it's really special. We were so instrumental in each other's paths, our career paths.
Kane added so much to Undertaker's career. Glenn is a very smart guy, and because of that, he's able to get into the characters. I mean, what he did with Kane, I don't think any other human being on the planet could have done.
There's Kane, The Undertaker's brother, and that hideous son of a... that Paul Bear!
It's so much more than just two guys in a wrestling ring.
You're unworthy of being my brother.
Kane vs. Undertaker was drama, theater, mythology.
I think it's one of those things like every once in a while, a high school drama teacher 50 years from now is going to show their kids a compilation of Kane vs. Undertaker, and they're going to talk about the elements that made that storyline so successful.
Mark and Glenn are extremely proud of their shared legacy, and what matters most to them is that the fans see it their way, 100%.
I challenge anybody to come up with a better story that has lasted that long, and just to be able to be relevant now, that means a lot to me.
That feeling of being able to touch people emotionally, it's just the greatest gift that anyone could have.
Thank you. Thank you, buddy. Love you, man.
That's gotta be Kane! That's gotta be Kane!
I remember like Kane would come out in the fire. You could feel the heat all the way up in the back. Almost like you were gonna get burned. It was so incredibly hot.
Hellfire and brimstone personified!